Everything that I thought made me valuable, my career, my status, my talent, got stripped away. And for the first time in my life, I saw who I really was. Not from what I built, from what team I played on, from how many points I scored in the basketball game, or how many blocks I got, from what I believed. I thought losing my identity ruined my life, but losing my identity didn't ruin me. It freed me. Today's video is not necessarily about tips. It's more about me going through a story that I talked about a couple of years ago here on the channel, and it's going to allow me to be a little bit more vulnerable, I guess, and share some truth. And the theme, I guess, for this video is that if you are clinging to the person that you were, you may be blocking who you are becoming. So let's go back to this story again. I had a few identity crises actually, but one of the biggest I had in my life was when I was a sophomore in college. I was playing probably the best basketball of my entire life. I was #1 in the SEC in block shots. I was almost leading the nation in blocks per percentage possession played or something. I did this all at 6'7" in the SEC. That's not as good as it is in 2025, but it's still a pretty tough conference. And 5 games before the end of that season, I broke my leg. Now I'm not going to get into it too much because I talked about it a couple times here on the channel. What I didn't talk about a lot was the impact that had. And I know personally that a lot of athletes who go through injuries feel the same way as I did, but they don't necessarily talk about it. So here's the behind the scenes of what I felt actually happened to me and how I felt that probably changed my life for the better. So before going through this injury, the person I thought I was 100% tied to my performance on the basketball court. If I didn't play well, I didn't feel well. If I didn't practice well, I didn't do well in class. It was all a reactive scenario to how well I was as a basketball player. And albeit when I was playing good basketball, my life was great. I was feeling confident. I had just met my girlfriend who is now my wife. I was doing amazing things in my life. And then when the tragedy hit that I broke my leg, it was a question of whether or not I would be able to play basketball again. And if I would still be the same player. As a player, my talent was grasped around my athleticism. I'm not saying my ankle injury was devastating to the fact where I wouldn't be able to walk again, but my biggest asset that I had to the team was my ability to jump, my ability to block shots, and my ability to grab rebounds. I wasn't the scorer by any means. I wasn't the first, second, third, or fourth option on the court, but I was an asset because I was able to be a defensive monster, quick on my feet, and all these things. And when the ankle injury happened, I didn't know if I could be any of that anymore. Imagine putting yourself in one box and these are the traits that define me as a person. And all of a sudden, everything that you put in that box for yourself is stripped away. It's no longer there. And there's nothing you can do about it really because it's just an act of God that it happened in the first place. And even with that, although I don't think I was a big victim of this in college, was that some of my identity was then held around the presence that I held in the public, the amount of Instagram followers that I had. Getting verified in like 2018 I think was pretty cool, but it all kind of went to my head as a 19, 20-year-old and it wasn't for the better. And when I got injured, I went through this identity crisis because it wasn't really the fact that I had failed, but it more was I didn't know who I was going to be at the end of it. I didn't know what I was going to become. When I did a deep dive of my reflection here on this YouTube channel, I realized that all I did was talk about personal finance and investing, and I came to a point where I did not really care about talking about that stuff every single day. I do think that it is valuable information that everyone should know, but I didn't want my whole life being centered around being the personal finance guy because I didn't even want to think about my personal finances every single day. I think that there's a structure that you should put in place, but as far as thinking about it and learning about it every single day, I don't know if that is the most effective approach. Most people don't usually let go of their identity, but rather it gets taken away from them. That collapse can often feel like a death, and you can grieve for it because it technically is. But the perspective that I was able to gain from that is that what if that collapse that you had, that breaking your identity, then sets the foundation for God to build a real you? I believe that pain is a mirror. It shows you what was fake, and at the end of all that pain that you experience, you start to see what really matters. And for me, it wasn't a title. It wasn't even being a basketball player. It wasn't even playing basketball at all, honestly. After I had recovered from breaking my leg, I was like, I don't even know if this is what I'm supposed to be called to do in my life because I felt a lot more fulfilled pursuing other opportunities. Now, back in my day, NIL wasn't a thing, so I couldn't technically create a YouTube channel with my name like I do now, but I did have a smaller YouTube channel known as the Centennial Investor where I really found value in making these videos. And I thought to myself, this is something that I would have never have experienced had I not had this break in my identity, had I not been forced to explore other options for a career because I didn't know if I'd be able to be good at playing basketball again. Then when my senior year came to a crossroads, I fell into another crisis and I stopped making content really consistently, but I still kept posting videos sporadically. But ultimately that sporadic posting led to a life where I am now, where I'm still trying to do the content creation thing, but I'm still working a 9-to-5 job full time as well. And then with the personal finance rebrand, it kind of goes all into that. I'm just trying to find out what fits me and what fits my lifestyle the best. But ultimately what it all boils down to is that if you go through this, there's a process where to be the most fulfilled, you must start to rebuild with absolutely nothing to prove. And that's where you start small. You start with reading your Bible every day. You start with just recording videos and just uploading, not worried about the YouTube analytics, the Google Google AdSense, anything like that. And what you want to then do is just focus on what serves your purpose, what you feel called to do, because ultimately that is what you're going to be the most fulfilled. When I looked at the future in this channel, even if I did make it to 100,000 subscribers, I didn't want to be stuck in a box of making personal finance content, even if I was making $100,000 a month, because that is not what inspired me. What inspired me was making content, but the type of content I was making was not what was fulfilling to me. So now as I rebrand this channel into content that's more inspirational, I will be making personal finance content whenever I see it fit. But I do read the comments that I get on the videos, maybe 1 or 2 people saying, hey, this really helped me today. This was a great story. All of that matters to me because I try to read and respond to every single one. And I just think truly to myself, if I can help one person with each video, no matter how small the audience may be, I feel like I have served the purpose. Feel like I have served the calling that God has put on my life. And what I feel so fulfilled with now is that I don't need the applause anymore. I don't need the likes, the verification. I don't need the views to feel fulfilled with making these videos, because I press upload and then I go to sleep. I give it to God and I go to sleep. I don't worry about the click-through rate. I may look at it a week or so later, but I know that these videos are not going to be super popular in the very beginning. But the fact of the matter is that I feel good while making these videos. And if that sort of transformation applies to you, it really lends itself to the idea of the gift of losing yourself. Because life is not supposed to stay stagnant. You're not supposed to stay who you were. All of us as people on this planet are never going to be perfect at any stage. So in order to be growing, we always need to be changing, expanding, and pushing ourselves outside of our comfort zone. Losing the false self, in my case, the basketball identity, creates space for the future self. What I see a purpose in of my life is trying to change the narrative one person at a time, that everybody you see online has to like a certain type of music, or have to do a certain amount of drugs, or have to live a certain amount of way in order to be cool, in order to be popular, when I believe that there is a base of hungry young men who are looking for direction in order to find truth, find discipline, find consistency in their lives so that they can actually reach the goals that they have for themselves. God didn't call you to defend your old identity. He called you to be a transformation, a story, a testimony to his people, to all people, of how far you can go if you really challenge yourself. So you may grieve who you thought you were. I grieved who I thought I was for a very long time, because my entire identity was wrapped up in basketball. And even when I started making a couple basketball videos on this channel, it could have been easy for me to go all in on that, because those videos are way more popular than my personal finance videos. That's just not the person I believe God has called me to be. So as a final challenge for today, I want to ask you, what do you need to let go of? What type of person do you think you are that you may need to look at a little bit more truthfully and a little bit more inwardly to truly find out if that's who you need to be? What title, reputation, or mask have you been clinging yourself to because you may be afraid of starting over? You may be afraid of starting from scratch. It may be embarrassing to start a brand new YouTube channel and put yourself on the internet because people may see it and laugh because you don't have any views. What are you scared of doing? And if you are in that situation, I just want to encourage you that you have the power to be whoever you want to be. And that goes for doing whatever you want to do. And the motto that I've been living by lately, and the project that I've been working on, is that what sort of calling do you feel that you have, and what would you wake up to do even if it took you 20 years to accomplish? I know I'm using a lot of YouTube examples, but if it took me 20 years to get a silver play button on YouTube, so be it. I'm going to be doing this for 20 years. If it took me 20 years to read the entire Bible, I'm going to read the entire Bible in 20 years. But if it took me 20 years to win a pickup basketball league championship, I wouldn't be so hyped about that. So find your why, find your calling, and let go of those older versions of yourself to make room for your future self. If you found value in this video, please consider subscribing. I'll see you in the next one.